For as long as football has been played, innovation has come from human knowledge. The manager, whose tactics were non-negotiable.
God wanted us to play football in the clouds, he'd have put grass there.
The scout, who found a genius at the local park. Kick and rush and the wall pass have given way to load management, PPDAs and OBSOs. The language has changed, but the obsession for finding an edge hasn't. AI is the buzzword of the moment, but what does it actually mean for football in the next 10 years?
My name's Alistair McRobert. I'm a Professor of Performance Analysis here at Manchester Metropolitan University. If I think about to 2016, when I was just starting out, or before that as an analyst, we'd be lucky to be 3 of us in a club, and we would cover the youth teams all the way to the first team. Now you've probably got an analyst in that traditional sense for all the teams across a club. More importantly, you have different types of analysts, tactical analysts, coach analysts, set piece analysts, and now you've got this other branch, which are data analysts. Our role is to process this information, make it reliable, and get it to a decision support system as quickly as possible. Think of it as having another assistant coach. It's just another stream of information that comes in to the coaching staff that they will process together before making a decision, whether it's how they set up at the weekend for the opposition as part of opposition analysis, or even to a point where if we're getting this data real time, do they have access to that during the game and on the bench so they can inform what they're going to do next.
So my name's Dave Adams. I'm the Chief Football Officer at the FA of Wales. I think using and leveraging data is going to be a really important part of what football looks like in 10 years. Typically and traditionally, coaches make decisions on feeling, on emotion. And I think we're trying to obviously remove that more and more these days, So, the other agile thing will be looking at the opposition weaknesses and recognizing, okay, this right back, for example, can no longer sustain that 1v1 situation. Can we make a change on that side to actually really expose that player in a 1v1 situation? So tactics will definitely be driven more by data and insights. And then it's about how do you then make sure that information flows from the people that see it to the head coach or to the assistant coach to ensure that decision's made quickly. And that's the other complexity of an emotional environment like football. When you're down the touchline making decisions, they can sometimes get a little bit lost in the moment.
So I'm Lee Mooney. I am Director of Mod Analytics. You've got wearables, you've got smart clothing that gives you all kinds of different signals. You've got optical tracking in stadiums. You've got all kinds of different streams. What that creates is a really complex ecosystem. And it's putting more pressure on people like myself who work on the sort of science side of it to say, right, well, we've got all this possibility. What can we do with this? Like, what problem can we solve? What question can we answer? How does that help us win more games?
Coaches used to rely on their instinct. But in the future, what if you could build an exact replica of every player and run the game 1,000 times before every kickoff? This is the digital twin.
My understanding of a digital twin is synthetic version of a player. You can represent their physical capability, their technical capability in a digital form, which means you can then model and do clever things with it. You can test different permutations of things that you can't do with the real athlete because you're going to overload them and you're going to wear them out and you're going to stress them or whatever it might be. I think you'd be able to ask really robust questions like, let's build a digital twin of an opponent, of the entire team. Let's build a digital twin of ourselves. Then you can go to a coach directly and say, look, I've played that game 1,000,000 times. If we set our defensive line 2 meters higher and we maintain this structure, we've got an extra percentage chance of winning the game, right? We can prove in that synthetic space things that we can then go and suggest or recommend or advise.
My name is Vijay, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Omniscope, where we decode the human immune system. The footballer of the future will have a cellular avatar. The footballer of the future will already be saving parts of their organs and cells to regenerate themselves when they get injured. The footballer of the future will have their own personal AI to understand everything about them in hyper detail. And rather than relying on intuition, the footballer of the future will be a scientist.
Heat maps, expected goals, and pressing metrics data has been influencing how clubs find players for years. But could advanced AI help find the next Messi?
I'm Matt Mueller, I'm the COO here at Huddle. And when you think about what I think the future will provide for football is really that connected ecosystem, top to bottom, powered by video and data that will just help make sure that every athlete gets to where they should in the football pyramid. We capture all this content, we put it into a global database. If you think about AI models that will maybe look at the way you run, the way you move around the pitch, the way you handle the ball. So not just being able to say you touched it, but you play like this style of player, and being able to very objectively say, hey, if you want this style of player, right now you've got an aging 9 and you want to replace them, here's a handful of options for you across the entire ecosystem that are available for you at multiple different levels. And maybe you need to bring a couple of them into your academy earlier, from a kid in Africa and a kid from Australia across into your academy. There's a world where a scout can watch 20 different athletes from 20 different countries, all from the comfort of their own recliner.
My name's Austin Fuller. I'm the product director for global football and rugby at Huddle. I think some of the stuff in 10 years' time and looking at the future of it is around like maybe psychological factors. So actually the psychology of a player. At this moment in time, it's one of those areas that's very much kind of when you've had a player in your organization, you can then go through that profiling from a psychological perspective. Whereas today we're looking at the event and tracking data as such. So you're not looking at the actual player themselves and how they're going to fit into the cultural element of that organization. I think that's one factor that in the future 10 years will be something that we're really focused on.
I think data does a brilliant job of getting you from, say, 400,000 to a candidate list of 10. I think from 10 to 1 is still deeply human. Lionel Messi at 16, what was his data footprint? There wasn't one, really. It didn't exist. So what is the world's greatest player at 16? What does that look like? No one has something to train a model to find that yet.
Not everyone is convinced that more data is the answer. With players facing more high-intensity games than ever before, injuries are at a record high. Dr. Martin Buscheit is the high-performance lead at Aspeter, the Qatari hospital recognized as a world-leading institution in sporting injuries. He believes the industry still has fundamental problems in how it measures and detects injury risk.
It's easier said than done than just bringing more technology and more data and more AI. That won't solve the problem if we don't take a step backwards and understanding the limitation of mainly the measurements. Everything we want to measure, we have more and more devices, but it's still not measuring really what we need or what we want. So then adding AI, adding more measurements won't take us anywhere. On the neuromuscular system, the tendon, the bones, we are very, very far from the truth. If we think metabolic activity, oxygen uptake, we use heart rate, that's closer to what it is. But now the other issue is the compliance. No one wants to wear a heart rate strap every single session. So now we have the tool, but you can't be bothered using the tool. So the magic wand for me, easy, to get better measurements of the actual neuromuscular tendon load of a match, a training, to understand what happens to the body when they train. Because it's something we don't have anything at the moment. I think in most of the clubs where I've consulted now recently, I've seen something done very well, but to see a club doing everything across the board well is still where the challenge is, because often you go through maybe difficulties in terms of collaboration. This is where sometimes you see those departments working a bit in silos. So let's say the medical department does an amazing job, but then the sports science does not, or vice versa. Coach gets sacked, they bring new staff in, start again. This is also probably why we have so many injuries, because we don't have the time to implement an optimal program.
Few things in football divide opinion like VAR. It looks like it's here to stay. But could the key to acceptance be technology that's actually good enough to end the arguments?
I'm James Young. I'm the VP of Sports Partnerships at Genius Sports. Looking ahead of where we are today, really any law within the game has an opportunity to be supported through technologies. We will see at the World Cup, for example, what's being called advanced semi-automated offside, where the decision will go straight through from the technology to the official on the pitch to try and make that decision as quickly as possible. Moving forwards, that could be, has the goalkeeper handballed outside of the area? Was the penalty foul inside of the area? I think certainly there will be a point in time where technology can make certain decisions without the oversight of a match official. And with the technology that we have, we create a virtual world. So within that virtual world, we're seeing the collisions of players and we can estimate the force of contact as well. So there is a time in the future where you may well see the collision speed or velocity being used to try and determine whether the foul was violent conduct or not.
Whatever happens next, football will still be football. The same agony and ecstasy of winning and losing. But behind the scenes, the game could be unrecognisable in 10 years' time. Because what's coming is not just an evolution of how it's played, but a revolution in how it's understood.
The rate of change is growing exponentially. We're just seeing evolution after evolution around approaches and techniques that are being used. If you compare, I think it's one Premier League game to one Formula One race, there's something like 5,000 times more data being created in Formula One than there is in a football match. So the volume of it is just going to explode by a factor of, like maybe 10,000 times the amount of data that we presently see. Bring it all back to what makes football so engaging, right? It's about those emotional stories and the memories that you can pass on to somebody. And that has its roots in the underdog beating the giant. And I think what we're going to see, I'm most excited about the possibility of, is technology making more of that happen. Smaller clubs beating bigger clubs, smaller clubs inventing new ways of overcoming the money. All these types of things is what I think is exciting about this wave of technology. There's a risk that the big guys with the biggest budgets will hoover it all up and dominate it. But there's also the possibility, because of the democratization of it, that actually smaller clubs and smaller organizations are going to find big advantages. And that's what I want to see.